What was originally scheduled to be a 30-minute interview turned into an hour-and-a-half conversation with Chicago's Bill Champlin.
You see me walking by, and the tears are in my eyes. Look away, baby, look away.
My conversation with Bill Champlin could have easily gone for another hour. I mean, we spent the time talking about family, his early musical influences, his personal projects, including his band, the Songs of Champlin, his time with Chicago, as well as changes within the music industry. I mean, his musical legacy literally spans his entire lifetime.
Well, my mom was a writer. She was a songwriter, and she was crazier than a junkyard dog, but she was a pretty good songwriter. And when I was a little baby, she put me in a playpen and put me under the piano and play piano all day. So I kind of grew up with music just pounding at the top of my head.
And his professional legacy spans well over 5 decades, starting with a strong foundation and respect for R&B.
I really dug straight ahead pop music until I heard the James Brown and the R&B thing. And I lived in Marin County, which is right across the bay from Oakland, which is, everybody knows Oakland, and that's where Tower Power came from. A lot of really cool stuff came out of there. So there was a radio station called KDIA. It used to have their transmitter was right at the Bay Bridge, at the beginning of the Bay Bridge on the Oakland side. And they had 50,000 watts of funk,
In 1978, following the death of their guitarist, Terry Kath, Chicago would make an attempt to recruit Bill, but at the time, he just didn't feel like he was the right guy.
Right after Terry had passed away, almost the next day, I got a call, because I had the same manager. And I got a call, and I didn't, they said, hey, you want to do this? And I said, I play guitar, but, and I play one solo. After that, it's the same solo. I'm not that good a guitar player, especially to fill Terry Kath's shoes. Terry Kath was Jimi Hendrix's favorite guitar player.
Finally, in 1981, Champlin would end up joining Chicago. And while the paired vocals of Peter Cetera and Terry Kath really did create a special kind of vibe, it would also become quickly clear that when Bill and Peter Cetera combined vocals, some special magic happened.
And Peter and I, we were knocking each other out. When we hit the microphone together, it was like, whoa, how about this for a blend?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where Danny said, whoa, we got to get Bill in the band.
I was acting as if you were lucky to have you a favor.
And then he went, what do you play? I said, I play keys and guitar. Not a lot of guitar, but I play enough to cover parts, without a doubt, to cover any part that's there. If I don't know it today, I'll know it tomorrow. I'm that guy. I live in the woodshed mostly.
Yep.
So he sort of talked the rest of the guys into it, and I went and met with them, and we all kind of got along. Everything was fine. So I got the gig.
And as a result, Bill would spend the next 28 years with Chicago, lending his vocals to a number of hit songs.
And I figured I'd give it 4 or 5 years, maybe 4 or 5 days, maybe. I'm gonna go with this until it really feels wrong. And after a little while, I got caught up in sang a hit or two.
Now, anyone who has spent time in a band at any level has quickly learned that there are band politics, and there are some relationships that just mix like oil and water. And Bill shared with me that much of his time in Chicago, he actually felt like there was a target on his back.
Because I know one of the guys in the band just didn't want me in there from the minute I was.
Really?
So I did 28 years with a bullseye on my back. You know what I mean?
Wow. That's makes it tough.
Yeah, it's just uncomfortable all the time. You know, I mean, at one point I was just shaking all the time. I said, "Well, who's gonna tag me today? What are they gonna hit me for today? What's it gonna be today?"
But after nearly 3 decades, Bill felt that it was time to return to the band that he'd actually started in 1965, a band that he had put on hold during his tenure with Chicago called the Sons of Champlin, or more simply, the Sons.
You gotta get your love in the line. If you ain't taking care of business, this you must expect. Love gets sick everywhere.
All right, now here's an interesting fun fact about the Sons. While they were preparing for the release of their debut album back in 1969, they would actually run into kind of a issue that would result in a delay of the release due to, unbeknownst to the band, profanity being found on their album cover.
We did a kind of a jam cover. A lot of people with colored pencils and pens put together the cover, and somebody wrote a bad, dirty word on it. So we had to pull back all of our records, hire people to cross out the word, re-shrink wrap them, and put them out again. So we missed that.
How many albums had to be crossed out?
I don't know. I think they did about at least 5,000, if not 10, something like that.
So as the saying goes, timing is everything. And considering that Chicago was releasing their debut album at the same time the Sons were, I'm left wondering if the delay in the Sons album created a change in fortunes for both bands.
But the first album, Loosen Up Naturally, was a double album. We did a deal with Capitol. They said, we'll just get paid for the one album. And obviously, and Chicago did the same thing, and they were both released in the same month. But some little lady in Atlanta, her son bought the record, and she just looked at the covers and went, this artwork is great. And she saw the dirty word and complained to Capitol. And, the poo-poo was in the fan as of that moment. So, they've always said that the release date's very important, and we just screwed it up. And at that point in the game, I think Chicago's record was started to flop.
Having the opportunity to talk with Bill really was a lot of fun. I mean, and there's a reason why our conversation went well beyond the actual scheduled time. I mean, we're talking about somebody who's been a participant in the music industry from some of the earliest days of rock, which means there's an opportunity for me to get some firsthand insights from somebody who was there.
I mean, for me, R&B was the whole thing, and that's kind of what I was trying to write. And then, at some point in the game, I was listening, I was a Wilson Pickett fan, right? Mm-hmm. And somebody actually got me drunk enough to sit down and listen to Bob Dylan and some of the Beatles stuff. And I went, whoa, here's some decent lyrics. Here's some lyrics that are saying something other than, baby, I'm a man and a half, which is pretty much the basic song of almost all R&B records at that time. So I was kind of going, well, why don't I write the R&B feel, but let me write some words over it that mean something? Because we were all taking acid at the time, and we were, kind of studying religions of different kinds, and not as a band, but I was paying attention.
And it would end up being that understanding, that deep connection with R&B, combined with the ability to write lyrics that actually say something, that would enable Bill to be a co-writer on Earth, Wind & Fire's second largest hit.
For a while, to love was all we could do. We were young and we knew in our eyes.
What was kind of cool about it is that, I write a lot of pre-choruses. We call them letter B. We're gonna go. Letter A is the verse, and letter B is the way to get to the chorus, and then letter C is the chorus. Well, I write a lot of letter B's, but this time the letter B, a lot of people thought was the chorus. That section, something happened along the way. That section there, people thought it was the chorus, and then along came the, after the love is gone, along comes that, and then you realize this song's got two choruses.
He would also co-write, along with Steve Lukather and Jay Graydon, George Benson's #1 hit song, Turn Your Love Around, for which they'd win a Grammy.
Turn your love around. Don't you turn me down.
And one more fun fact about Bill that you may not have known, but if you're a fan of crime dramas from, say, the mid-1980s to the mid-1990s, there's a high probability that you heard his voice on the theme song to the TV series In the Heat of the Night. And I'm happy to share that Bill has remained quite active in a number of projects, including this year teaming up once again with guitarist Jay Graydon for a collaboration with Norwegian singer-songwriter Ole Beirut.
I just did a guest appearance with an artist who's basically kind of a crossover West Coast Christian artist named Ole Beirut, B-O-R-U-D. And he's a monster. I've been a fan of his for a couple of years. And he finally got in touch with me and said, can I get you to sing on this record with me? It was a song called Find a Way. It's a really cool record. And he got Michael O'Mardian, who was the piano player and producer for Christopher Cross, to play piano on it. And he got me to sing a duet with him.
I was walking through sunny weather with no shelter from all the rain, and my eyes could not believe what you tried to help me see.
Bill also has two more projects, keeping him pretty busy. One of which would actually see him pair back up with fellow Chicago bandmate Jason Scheff.
Doesn't matter what you say, those are just a game you play. Tell me, try to sell me, show me.
Then Bill Champlin and Wonderground, which would also feature his wife Tamara and friend Gary Falcone.
You keep bleeding those secrets from your cold broken heart. I remember when you loved me like a little schoolgirl, and you told me that I was your man.
Bill's current projects, his new material is as strong as anything that he'd ever put out there. And there's actually quite a bit of variety there. So depending on what your style is, I invite you to check it out and give it a listen. And over the past year, I've got a growing playlist of artists that you could have expected to hear on mainstream radio in the 70s and 80s who are putting out new material, new albums right now. It's just, for whatever reason, they're not getting the push. And I shared this thought with Bill to get his feedback. I've been trying to keep up with a lot of the albums that have been coming out from, let's just say, artists that were really, the peak of the mainstream 70s, 80s. And it's disappointing, just the push isn't there, You've got to really dig to stay up with it. And I talked about...
If you're not pushing yourself, it ain't going to happen. And I've always been kind of, I hate self-promotion. It just feels smarmy to me somehow. But it's got to be done. People have to know that you've got something available. I mean, I did what I could. I was, mail ordering CDs and everything, and I think we broke even on the record. But I got really good players, and I got Mark Russo, the sax player with the Doobie Brothers. He sat in on 2 or 3 tunes. A handful of good players. Andreas Carlson is a really great Swedish writer. He wrote a lot of the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and Britney and those kind. He was working with Max Martin over there, and he's an old pal of mine, so he's on the record. I got a handful of really cool people on the record. It's mostly me. I'm just, I play guitar and keys, and then I just sort of program the grooves in, and I usually get. On this album, I got Alan Hertz on drums, and I kind of split it up between Alan Hertz and Gordon Campbell. And Gordon is just a great drummer.
Over the course of our conversation, Bill shared with me a lot of the insights and observations that he's been able to make in regards to changes of the industry over his career. Radio stations that have changed format, record labels who no longer develop a bench of new talent. And then, of course, there's the move to digital streaming.
I don't know how it happened, but somehow the ownership of everything is out of the hands of musicians and into the hands of either lawyers or managers or agents, or I'm not sure who it is. But, and we could go on about Spotify forever and Pandora and all the other kind of things. And, my wife's got Spotify. I just refuse to do it. That's just, I just don't want to throw any more money at those guys. Record companies are making as much now as they've ever made. But record companies used to have a bench. They used to, while their main artist was up there selling a bunch of records and touring and making a lot of noise, and they're all real happy about it, they're developing other bands so that when that first band starts to go away, there's somebody right in the pipeline ready to go. There's somebody they can put their energy behind. None of that's going on anymore. It's all to make it, labels I think are one artist per demographic. That's it.
So there you go. That's really a summary of my conversation with Bill Champlin. But here's the thought that I want to leave you with. You see, the artists that we grew up listening to, the artists that we have so many of our memories from our life experiences attached to, many of them are still putting out music. They're putting out great music, but the push isn't there anymore. So what do we do as fans and as music lovers to continue to show that support? Well, first off, maybe we need to look for it. But after that, maybe we go grassroots and we help spread the word. When the band comes to town, we buy the ticket to see the show, and maybe instead of just streaming the music, we buy the album. And we do what we can to put the money and the control back into the hands of the artists that we love.